Hey, what's up guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review for the AOC AG352QCX. Now it's part of the AGON line, and it's AOC's gaming line of 35-inch curved display. Yes, it's a beast. Now this monitor can be found between £520 and £610. Link on Amazon.co.uk will be down below. You can source it from different retailers out there, such as eBay as well. Now the monitor itself runs at 2560 times 1080, so it's a 1080p monitor. As I said before, it's a 35-inch curved monitor, and I'll show you the curvature in just a bit. Has a aspect ratio of 21:9, has a response time of 4 milliseconds because it runs on a MVA panel. It has a 200 Hz refresh rate, which is fantastic, and I've tested it, and unlike a previous AOC monitor that I reviewed, which was the Q3583 FQ, which I'll link down in the description below, pretty much fits the same sort of description. It was 1080p, it was 35-inch, it had 160 odd hertz or 165 odd hertz or something like that, but unfortunately didn't properly run at that refresh rate. Well, thankfully this monitor, I've tested it and runs at 200 hertz, no problems. However, there's certain other issues that I noticed, but those are trivial issues, and I will mention them in the review as it goes by. So yes, it runs at 200 Hz. In terms of input, you've got VGA, which I don't know why, but you've got VGA, DVI, HDMI, and DisplayPort. Currently I'm using HDMI to connect it to my PC. That means it's also got sound. Now in terms of sound, you've got a single 5-watt speaker, which in all honesty actually sounded pretty good for a monitor speaker. It had a really bassy tone to it, probably a bit too bassy in terms of my audiophile side of me coming out, but nevertheless it had a bassy tone to it, and I was actually quite impressive for a speaker. In terms of the other inputs, you've got a USB hub, which gives you 2 extra USB 3.0 ports, and you've got inputs and outputs of 3.5mm jacks for your headphones and a line in. So any other specs you're interested in will be down in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Now, I should mention that this monitor is currently running at 144 Hz, and I'll mention that why in just a bit. But before we do that, let's look at the build quality of the monitor. And to do that, I'm going to take my monitor off my stand and reduce to EV, which I just did. Now, in terms of the build quality of the monitor, I am very, very impressed. First of all, starting off with these lights. Now, these lights at the bottom can be customized by a flick of the small joystick button, which can be found just underneath over here. Hopefully you can see it. You get a certain control. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it's a right. There we go. And you get green. If I go back, you see green, blue, and red. So it's very easy to use, and you can change it between strong, off, weak, and medium. So I've got it on strong. The beauty of these colors is that just added color just gives it a little bit more personality, and more so you'll see it around the back. Hopefully, there you go. Now, it's a bit of a big monitor, it's very, very tight on my desk, so that's why it's a bit hard to position it around. But anyway, the green color is very nice, at least I've chosen green. It looks very cool. Now, in terms of the build quality of the monitor, it's very, very good. Despite it only being one single stand, it's a metal frame, and it's very, very sturdy. You basically bolt it in, and it sits very, very sturdy on your desk. Now, in terms of the bezels, they're very thin, meaning you're not too distracted by the actual monitor itself. Even though it's got a matte finish to it, these have got a glossy-esque finish, which might distract you in some ways because you can maybe see your reflection. You might not be able to see it there, but you can see over here, you see a slight little reflection. But in all honesty, it's such a small bezel that it doesn't really distract your eyes that much. Now, you might be wondering at the top over here what this is. Well, this is a little headphone stand, which is very much useful for gamers out there, which just put some headphones on. The monitor is very heavy, so it can hold any sort of headphone size and weight. So in terms of build quality, I've got absolutely no complaints. I'm just going to put the camera down back on its tripod and show you that it also does pivot. Now, I can't pivot fully because my speaker is kind of limiting it, but it does pivot to quite a good distance, and obviously that stand is still rock steady on the floor and not moving while the monitor is. You can go up and down as well. You can't rotate it for obvious reasons, but I mean, in terms of adjustments, I'm very much impressed given it's a massive 35-inch curved monitor. So yes, you're also able to see there's a slight curvature that comes out over here. Now the curvature is really well done. It's not overemphasized in terms of the panel itself, and by that I mean I don't get any sort of distortions coming on the outer edges of the monitor, which is impressive because that's what I would expect from a proper curved monitor, and it just shows how far technology has gone. Unfortunately, previously I had reviewed curved monitors and I noticed distortions on the side. That is no longer the case, so great job AOC and well Agon for producing a good curved monitor. I should also mention that right at the back you've got a kind of hook. You can just carry the monitor. I don't suggest carrying this monitor because it's an absolute beast. It's very hard to carry. So anyway, that is the build quality of the monitor. Very impressed with AOC in that respect. Now let's talk about panel. So I mentioned I was running at 144 Hz, and there's a reason behind that. The reason I'm running at 144 Hz rather than 200 Hz is the fact that there's a gamma shift at 200 Hz. It's pretty much normal for the overclocking community to see a gamma shift. The higher Hertz you go, the more of a gamma shift you get. And this is the case with this panel. You get a gamma shift, meaning that the colors are just a little bit more washed out, or should I say the blacks and whites are a little bit more washed out, and therefore you don't get a proper contrast. Not as good of a contrast as you would get on a lower frequency. So in this respect, I felt that 144 Hz provided me enough frames for the games I was playing. In this respect, it was Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and more so when it came to actually using it, I felt that I had better colors. So based on that, I'm going to be running 144 Hz. However, as I should say again, 200 Hz worked flawlessly and I had no problems with it. Now in terms of the colours themselves, I'm actually very impressed. The contrast ratio is very well done. The colours really do pop. You've got deep blacks over here without no shifts of any sorts due to the curvature, as I said before, and the whites are pretty accurate as well. In fact, in terms of colour reproduction, I'm very impressed. I feel that it's lacking that sort of pop that an IPS or PLS panel can provide, but nevertheless that VA panel is known to be giving good colours, and I'm very much impressed to say, I'm very pleased to say, that the monitor's colours are very good. So you won't be displeased with that. The only thing you might be displeased about is the fact that it runs at only 1080p and doesn't run at 1440p or 4K or whatever it might be. So anyway, the colours are good. What about its gaming performance? Well, I was actually impressed. Its gaming performance actually does very well. Now through the OSD, I actually turned on overdrive, meaning that I try and get the best out of the monitor when it comes to gaming. And I must say, even on overdrive, there was literally no ghosting that I could notice, which is actually surprising because for a VA panel, normally you'd notice some ghosting. Now, if I go into the OSD, which is, well, let me just try and remember how to do it. Bottom, nope. Left, nope. Yeah, pressed. So anyway, in my settings, I've got the color setup as user. I've got red as 48, G as 50, and blue as 52. And in terms of the OSD, here we go, the game settings, I've got overdrive and overdrive on strong, and I've got low input lag enabled, so it's on. Now if I were to disable overdrive and put it as off, you might notice there's a bit more blurring that occurs, but there's absolutely no ghosting. But then when I turn it on, there's just a tiny amount of ghosting, but it's completely acceptable for any monitor, to be honest, and in all honesty, I had no problems. Now when it came to input lag, I felt that this monitor performed very good. Minimal input lag, at least perceived input lag, and just generally in terms of response time of the monitor, it's 4 milliseconds, and to be honest, it performs very similar to its quoted specifications. It's not like an 8 or 10 milliseconds response time monitor. It really does perform well, so I can really see myself gaming competitively on this monitor. It's not a monitor I'd feel that is lacking that prowess, and it's not one that has disadvantages. I actually wanted to play a game competitively on this monitor, but I thought to myself, probably not a good idea playing at a higher rank with a monitor that you're not used to. But nevertheless, it is fantastic for competitive gaming, and I'll definitely suggest it for that reason. So overall, guys, I think this monitor is fantastic. Given its price, given its specs, given its look and design, I think AOC have really hit the nail on the coffin with this monitor. They've finally nailed down the curved monitor. I think it's one of the best curved monitors I've actually come across. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. Make sure you give it a like, comment and subscribe, and definitely favourite and share this video, and let me know in the comments below what you think. I should also mention, by the way, before I go, yes, it has AMD FreeSync. The FreeSync range can be found on the specs in the page below. See you guys, bye bye.